I'm a negotiator. I'm going to ask for 60. I only need 50, right? Like 50 is like, that's a crazy number because that will be twice what I need to serve. Like, I don't, I'm surviving already. I could do this. I asked the recruiter. The recruiter's like, okay, it's time to do the negotiation part. How much are you looking for? Because she didn't say what she was going to offer first. I would like 60. I'm full body sweat at asking for 60. She's like, hold on.
Hey, Joelle, welcome to Money Bites.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me.
Super excited to have you here. We have a few resident questions that I always ask. And the first one is, could you give a one-line intro of yourself?
Hi, I'm Joelle Nivens. I'm a UX researcher at Meta. I was trained as an anthropologist, and now I work on hardware products and run research studies at Meta.
I am so excited for this conversation because anthropology to UXR, it seems a big leap of faith. But after talking to you, there was a lot of overlaps and it made sense. But before we go into that, what does UXR, UX researchers do?
So we speak with users. We're actually kind of like the advocate for the user and the user's experience with products within the company. So product managers and engineers and designers are kind of there to support a lot of what the company needs. And UX researchers gather feedback, analyze it, and try and help the teams make user-centric products and product decisions.
That's an awesome recap. But how do you spend most of your working hours in terms of, say, 20% with XFNs, alignment, etc.?
All right. Oh, okay. Let me think of my work day. I probably spent about 40% of any given day in conversation with XFN, trying to better understand what are the objectives for a product or what their goals are, what metrics they're taking as KPIs, what is going on with that part of the product, what updates there are, changes there might have been to roadmaps, planning. So about 40% of any day is spent on various stages of working with XFN to understand the landscape of what the business priorities are, what we're trying to achieve, and what they're doing. Then, I would say 20% of the remaining day is spent analyzing data that I've collected, whether it be things that are coming in from surveys or things that are coming in from UX research that have been executed, like interviews and things like that with users. So then split this with about 20% is socializing findings from previous studies. So we've done the analysis, we've reported it out. I know what I think users feel about some of the different products that we have. So I do a lot of publicizing and communicating my findings and trying to draw connections between the product marketing, the people who sell it, and the product teams themselves, the people who build it, and make sure that there's alignment there and everybody knows what we're working on. And then the final 20% is probably reporting data. So it takes a lot because in order to have something really compelling to publicize and to help teams make sense of really the quantity of information that we're able to get at a large company like Meta is daunting. That takes a lot of time to put together those stories and present them in a artful way that's clear and concise and will lead to impact on purchase and product decisions.
Curious, what would you say is your number one favorite part about being a UXR versus least favorite? What do you hate about it?
Oh, good question. All right. I'm going to say something. It's going to sound like I am hedging. I'm not hedging.
Okay.
I will start with what I don't like, but I will say that really depends and changes because actually being a UX researcher for me, I found is a really different job every time I move teams. So there isn't like a set role that UX research is playing, at least not in the companies that I've worked for or on the teams that I've been on. I am not a particularly design-minded researcher. I don't have a strong background in design. I came from academia. I came from studying people, studying cultures. So anything that is a little too bounded for me in the product itself and like the buttons or the look or even to a certain extent functionality. Functionality is better for me, but things that are more design research, those are not my favorite. I am happy to do it if it's part of my job, and I think it's incredibly important. It's just not how my personal brain works of like, oh, that's exciting. I want to get into the weeds more of questions that are like, what should we build? And when should we build it? Those are more my jazz of like, ooh, let me go talk to people. Let me figure out what they care about. Let me figure out how this product is going to fit in their lives and like spend a lot of time on those questions. And that helps me be better at informing how we should prioritize our roadmap and what should even be on the roadmap. And that's kind of the sweet spot of my favorite. I like to be part of the process a little bit more. And I get really frustrated with the quantity of meetings that are involved in being a consultant type researcher. And I don't have as much patience as I should for certain things that would make me better at that job.
Thanks for the honesty. I am hearing a few things already of how you were very much influenced by your academic training. Curious, what were you trained in archaeology?
So I actually studied prehistoric archaeology and specifically Ice Age archaeology in Europe. So I spent a lot of time on the part of the first couple of modern humans in Europe. So there's an outmigration into Europe. And when you think of the Ice Age, like of like cave paintings and like, you know,
mammoths.
cavemen.
I don't know if that's my time period.
Well, if people know something, or if you're thinking of like cavemen and people running around in furs and like icebergs all over Europe, and there's cave paintings and shaman and things like that, that time period is the time period that I focused on. They don't appear out of nowhere. There is a gradual kind of evolution of them, but they seem to just like flourish at a certain time period. And I was always really fascinated with the way technology and particularly like cultural, like material culture and body ornaments and like things like jewelry and symbolic materials. And when I put it that way, it becomes a little bit clearer how I end up in tech. Because what I actually studied was the anthropology of technology. So how everything we make and the way we make it is influenced by our culture and how our culture influences the way we make things and what we make.
That is absolutely fascinating. This time period, though, your archaeology experience was also when you had your highest life satisfaction and lowest life satisfaction. Why was that?
Yes, it is very difficult to be broke. It's extremely difficult to be broke in America. And it's even worse to be broke in New York City. Although I will say, if you're going to be broke anywhere, it's probably the best place to be broke. But it's hard. Things are very expensive. Cost of living is very high, especially basic necessities like a roof over your head. And this field is really fascinating, super interesting, especially because I was passionate about it. Like I felt like madly, deeply in love with the questions, with the time period, with the work I was doing, the community that I became a part of. It's very all consuming. And for me, it was a real genuine passion and interest that like those questions are still really like, I would wake up in the morning like, what is the answer to that? And I don't know if I have that for many other things in life. At the same time, it's not a field that is extremely well financed or like supported. And even I'd made some decisions about like where I went to grad school, how I went about the program. I had some luck with grants that I wasn't even experiencing like the worst of what that financial burden could be because I didn't need to take out any loans or anything like that. And I'd had most of my work funded. But being financially successful as a graduate student is a very, very different scale of support than being financially successful or even comfortable in like everyday life. So for me, it's like, oh, I got a grant that will give me $30,000 a year in New York City so that I can pay my rent, pay for these things, pay taxes, and like eat and travel and like do what I need to do for my research. So I had my basic necessities covered, because the other part of that is that grants, you have to support your life, but the primary thing is to support your research. So the money goes to the research first and then to you to support what you're doing. So traveling to conferences costs money. Traveling to research sites costs money, especially when you study in Europe. You know, meeting with other researchers, doing projects, having materials, all of that costs money. So it was comfortable for me, but always at the brink of financial disaster, depending on what was going on. And you apply for more grants and you win some, but you lose some others. And so it's a very difficult hamster wheel for supporting yourself financially. My passion and about the job I was doing was very high, but my quality of life suffered quite a lot, because there was a lot of travel, a lot of long hours, very few resources.
Was that the reason why you had two dips in your life satisfaction? Was it you were disillusioned, but somehow you got the courage to go back and try it one more time?
Well, actually, so two things happened. One is, and this is probably not helpful for my time in graduate school, like for what went down. I always like to couch it in like, people have different experiences. And one of the things that was particularly hard for me is that I'd had some like a family tragedy right at the beginning. So the day I started graduate school, we lost two toddlers in our family. We had a terrible, tragic event, but it was the day I started graduate school. So I literally was in the office and then had to fly home, and we were here, and I'm a very close, tight-knit family. So it was extremely, extremely, extremely devastating. I mean, it would have been devastating anyways, even if your family's not close. But for us, it was just like, our whole family was rocked to the core. But the first month of graduate school, especially in the fields that I was in, is extremely important, because there are certain grants that are only available to you the first and second year of your graduate program. So you only have two chances to get this grant and have money for the rest of your graduate school career. And there's no like bereavement. Oh, I missed this one. Can I apply later? Like if you miss this cycle, you get one chance, and they only award like 20 in the country for all industries, all things, everybody that's available. So it's very unlikely to get it in the first place, but you only have two chances to do this. And if you do it the first time, you at least get comments back, and it'll help you with the second one. So I had this family event happen. It was incredibly traumatic and like very, depressing, and like just grieving, going through bereavement. But I also had to go back and write two grants, which is a very involved process, high stakes, in like a month, and have like essentially 3 weeks of sleeping in the office, trying to get it done, because I'd missed the first month of writing that other people hadn't missed. And so I had to churn it out and try and get this grant. But from a life perspective, that wasn't, not a great kickoff to the rest of the experience, but pretty indicative of kind of the dark side or the negative side for this field and industry, was that, at Meta, I can take a bereavement leave or a leave of absence because it's like a corporate job and there is things in place for that. In academia, it's like you win some, you lose some. Like you're on this very competitive track and there's no time to stop to take care of yourself. So that's the first dip. And then the second dip is at the end of graduate school, when I just completely burnt out. So knowing how graduate school starts, it's probably not surprising that, 6 or 7 years later, I'm totally cooked. There's nothing left in the tank. I hadn't taken care of myself in the way I needed to throughout the process, and was pretty disillusioned with the level of sacrifice that I needed to give in order to be successful, and the level of reward in terms of community and finances and career support that I was getting back.
First off, I'm so sorry for your loss. That
Yeah.
is heartbreaking. Do you feel this experience changed your perspective of your non negotiables for your job?
Yes, it took too long though. So what happened was that after I came back and wrote those two grants that I only had two choices, two options, I actually got one of those grants. So that was amazing and like very amazing accolade. And I could not even like, I got it and I was like, great, I can survive, like this is good news, but I couldn't appreciate it really because it just wasn't in a mental state to be able to do that. It probably took the next 6 years and like lots of therapy afterwards to even understand that I was experiencing a shift in my perspective and in like what counts and what doesn't, because I needed to make all those sacrifices for those years, I think. I just was very hard headed about the lessons I was learning, so I'd make the sacrifice, I'd get the thing and I'd be like, well, did I learn I should do that? Or did I learn that I shouldn't do that? I'm not sure. Let's do it again. Like apply for the next grant, put the next thing on hold. Yeah, exactly. Like just move forward. And so by the time I burnt out, that's what really led to all those lessons from the previous 6 years sinking in. And now when I approach my career, when I approach new things, and even in transitioning, because right after burning out, that's when I started transitioning back into industry to have a job outside of academia and ultimately end up where I am, that my non-negotiables now are really, really different than what baby Joelle at 19 would have been willing to put up with or would have thought was okay.
Well, let's talk about Magic Leap for a while. You joined Magic Leap after a research position, a marketing research position. Once you joined Magic Leap, your net worth graph does like a 90-degree spike.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
Yeah. And what's funny? For people who work in big tech, it's probably like, oh, that money is like chump change. Like people don't pay you enough at startups, blah, blah, blah. There is not money in the field that I was in before. And other than academia, I'd worked in nonprofit, and there is not money in nonprofit at all. But there is money in tech. And there are benefits in tech that I just had never experienced before. So what happened was that I kept my lifestyle exactly the same. So after I got the Magic Leap job, I didn't move apartments. I didn't buy a new car. I didn't change anything about my lifestyle. I had the exact same lifestyle that like the $25,000 a year job had offered, because I just didn't believe it was going to last forever. I was like, oh, this is great today, but I don't know what's going to happen. And like, as long as this is, I'm not changing anything. I'm not sure about this new path, because I was always testing things out as I was going along. And I didn't want to end up in another situation where I couldn't change my mind if I didn't like it. So I didn't change anything because I could afford it. And I wanted to keep that gap between what my ceiling was and where I was as big as possible. That's always my major motivation. So I didn't change anything. So when I got like 4 times as much money at Magic Leap, I just got this, pocketed that extra. Like, that's what that is.
I can, in a sense, empathize, because after going through several years of solopreneurship before joining big tech, that difficult times is kind of grained in you. And I'm making good money now, but I still have trouble spending it on myself sometimes, because it's like you gotta prepare yourself for the winter. Winter is coming.
Winter is coming. Winter is always coming. But it's twofold, right? Because that's the scarcity mindset that we just trauma. We're not going to get rid of that. We can work on it, but it's not going anywhere, because it was hard earned that we got it. Is that winter is coming, so you have to prepare for that. And I think that's just good common sense. Maybe other people might think about it differently. But the other one that's a little more positive is that flexibility, when you keep costs low and you don't change your lifestyle and have like lifestyle inflation to match it, it gives you the flexibility and the freedom to make another choice if you need to, right? So like, you've kept your lifestyle in such a way that
maybe I don't, now I couldn't go back to the lifestyle before exactly. Like I would need a bit more because I have since made choices like buy a house and stuff like that's like put us in a place where, okay, we can't do this on 25K, but we can do it on 60, like that we could do. Where the job that I needed to maintain the lifestyle, I need to be able to get that job relatively easily. That's my other metric because it gives me the flexibility of saying, I don't like this anymore. And I don't need to stay here. I can find other opportunities that fit me better than what's going on. Because if I make my lifestyle go all the way up to what I'm currently making at this big tech job that is very grueling, then I have to stay here because I can't find this paycheck anywhere else. And I don't like that anymore. I'm not doing that. I don't want to stay somewhere just because I have to. I need to be able to move. So my aunt in Patois, so my family's Jamaican, and my aunt would always talk about training us as kids about you don't go on a date unless you have cuss money. And cuss is like to curse someone out. Mm-hmm. So you need to have money in your pocket that when you want to just cuss the person and get in a cab and go home, you have it. Nobody could tell you can't go. So I have my cuss money fund is, I'm leaving.
Love it. Love it. I love the fact that you're also keeping your flexibility. Magic Leap, though, was also, even before you started, gave you a financial lesson in terms of salary negotiation.
Yes. So that
apparently you had lowballed yourself and the recruiter called you out.
Well, yeah, I had no idea how much money people made. Like a 6-figure salary was a fantasy. It's like, oh, when you really are making money, you make 6 figures. Like, financial people, like, stock traders and like people on Wall Street, they make 6 figures. Like I had no idea about money. I didn't know how much money was out there in the world. And so, because I hadn't been working for money before that, I'd been working for passion, right? It's a different thing entirely. So I had gotten the offer to get the job at Magic Leap, and I knew I was probably going to get paid more than I was currently making. And I knew what my number was to be comfortable, right? So based off of where my lifestyle was at the time, it was like, I think I was making like 30K, maybe. I think it was 28 or something like that. And I was like, all right, to be really comfortable, to like collect my fund and be wherever and like move up, I think I need 60. No, I need 50, but I'm going to ask for 60 because I'm a negotiator, right? I'm a negotiator. I'm going to ask for 60. I only need 50, right? Like 50 is like, that's a crazy number because that will be twice what I need to serve. Like, I'm surviving already. I could do this. My rent was like $900. Like I could do this. So I asked the recruiter. The recruiter's like, okay, it's time to do the negotiation part. Like we're going to offer you, how much are you looking for? Because she didn't say what she was going to offer first. Like rule number 1 now, I know, what are you offering me first? But I didn't do that. I was just eager to get a better job and work there. I really wanted to get that job. It's like, oh, I am going to make, I would like 60, I'm full body sweat at asking for 60. And she's like, I'll never forget her. Kudos to her. She was a real one. She's like, hold on. 100 is the highest that I can offer you. Would you like to revise? The range is 90 to 100. Would you like to revise what you're asking? And I was like, yeah. If 100 is it, I want 100. And she's like, okay, done. Plus there you go. Now, thank God for her. Thank God. I mean, every day, like women helping women, that was so important for the meta job. I spent a lot more time researching jobs and negotiation and money. And I by that time, I had mentors in the field who could help me through that. And even then they were still talking to me like, what number are you going to ask for? You're bonkers. Ask for this, like increase that. Tack 20, put this on there. Get a signing bonus. Do this thing. And I'm like, are you sure? I think that's crazy.
And you got it?
Yeah, I got it. I got more than I had asked for at Meta. So That's amazing. So I'm still learning, but now I share all those resources. I have like a collection of links that are like, this is this website, that's that website. But every time it's a new challenge because there are things that I didn't understand moving from Magic Leap to Meta about like RSUs and like negotiating for stock and stuff like that you have to learn while you're going through it. And I honestly will be very honest that I still don't understand. Like RSUs completely. I'm like, I get money, give me cash money. I understand that. RSUs, like that math is still very hard. I just follow what my mentors say to do and like tack on advice that I've collected from the internet and hope for the best. But my next job, I'm going to negotiate both parts even better than I did the first one.
What's the number one advice that your mentors gave on RSUs?
Number one advice. Actually, the number one piece of advice I got was not to get so hung up on the individual components of how I was getting paid, like to actually negotiate for a total comp. Like that's what we need to focus on, like try and get the total comp up into X range, because then you can play with it. Because to me, RSUs weren't real money when I was first thinking about it. Like I didn't understand. It's like I have to pay taxes on it, but then they go up and down in price. I'm like, this is complicated. Like this is not cash money. I understand cash money. But so I was like, oh, I want to say that I want this salary in the negotiations. And like, this is my salary range. And one of my great mentors was like, no. You're going to ask for this total comp, like calculate the total comp that you want, give that range, also tack on 20K because you're underbidding yourself probably, like keep it going. And then they will tell you and negotiate that percentage of what is RSUs and what is salary. Because on the back end, different companies have different flexibility with those two major components. And so they might, like certain companies might be able to give you more RSUs to get you there, but they can't do that with salary. Whereas other companies, they can do that with salary, but they can't do that with stock or other investments. So to let them kind of work out on the back end what they're going to do. And true to form, I think it was I don't remember the exact calculations now, but I think it was the RSUs, that allocation that allowed me to get above what I had been asking for because I wasn't particular about like the number of salary.
I love that. That is such a great advice. And exactly to your point, especially in tech, in big tech, because equities is such a huge portion of compensation, you're really leaving money on the table if you're not looking at total comp. One other thing that came into play as we look at your post-academia life is the proximity to layoffs.
Oh, this lesson. So, you leave academia. I leave academia at least. Like it was an ultra competitive field, very, very few options, constant rejection that you get used to. And they have real consequences, right? Because when you don't get your grant, you don't eat. So you need to figure out how to get this grant or this job or figure something out. And I'm like, I need something more stable. I need something where the relationship is, we agree at the beginning of the contract how much I'm going to make. And then you pay that to me incrementally over this time. And I work. Like you pay me and I work. So I moved fields for this. And then I come into the industry and I get my first like big girl job at Magic Leap. And I'm like, okay, not that, working at the market research company was good and it was great. It was stable. But even that was like contract based and like, as they had clients, then things are flush. If you don't have clients, you move over, So it was a little bit more unstable, but never like the bottom's going to fall out because there's always some client. They just might not be big enough for everybody kind of deal. Then I started Magic Leap. Things are great for 3 months. Everything's great. And then the day after, I defend my dissertation. So I have finished graduate school officially that day. And this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I took the day off. I get the call on the way to my parents' house to celebrate my dissertation defense and graduate school finally being over. It is Roni, the CEO of the company, crying about mass layoffs for 50% of the company. Like, you're going to find out whether you're laid off in the next hour, but things are hard. Pandemic, life. We're like, what? So mass layoffs, half the company is gone. I thankfully, miraculously, was not laid off in that wave, but there were a ton of good friends and people who were. And that was my first lesson about like, there's cuss money and the bottom falling out money. Like, you better have that 6-month fund because you don't know what's going to happen. And I think people did get severance there, but it wasn't as good as like the meta severance or whatever. I don't think it even included like life and health insurance or stuff like that. I don't know what the actual severance package was anymore, but it wasn't good enough for what that shock did to me. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I didn't realize this was part of the game here. Like, high stakes, high reward. Like, I feel like I'm playing roulette, like what's going on? So then we were on a layoff watch for the rest of like another 6 months or something like that after that, and became acutely aware that as funding flexed, so did our job prospect and the potential of layoff, and like constantly living with the sense of like it could fall out at any moment. And so that was also why I didn't really increase my cost of living or like my lifestyle any. After that, if there was ever going to be a time I was going to increase my lifestyle, that killed it dead. Like, no way, no. If I need to go back to market research, I need to be able to go back to market research, and then we just gain everything from here. So all spending was shut down. And then, and for the entire time I was at Magic Leap, and then I got the job at Meta, and I was like, okay, I'm making more now. This is a publicly traded company that in the history of it's a very old company now. It's like 20 something years old. It's well established. The company is making billions of dollars a year. There's profits of billions of dollars. Like, all right, I'm safe here. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to start changing things to like reach that next level, take some of the gains that I've made while at Magic Leap and invest them and use them to increase a little bit. Just going to buy a house. Just going to buy a house I can afford. It's going to be fine.
House.
With my husband, I'm going to have a partner. So, we're going to make it really comfortable and good. I think it was 6 months this time. 6 months in, first layoffs in company history. 8 months in, second layoffs in company history. 10 months in, third layoff in company history. Oh, and there's layoffs all over. So there's nowhere to go. Job market dried up. Like, things are looking bad, particularly for researchers, because, you guys, product managers, they need you. They don't think they need us. They need us as well, but they think they could get away with having one researcher instead of two. And it's like, I feel like you would, I don't know if that's what I would cut, but like, I get it. I don't build anything. So I get it. So things have been really tight in the industry since then. And I am glad that the only change that I made was the house. But honestly, that had put me back in that mindset of like, okay, we had made this one shift and it had changed our financial situation with all the rules in the right way. I didn't like buy a mansion. We bought a house we could afford that was within our means to like keep it within a certain percentage of what we're making, and it was comfortable. But even that, if your salary goes down to zero, it's no longer within the 25% or whatever of housing cost. So being pretty conservative about lifestyle and keeping lifestyle manageable has been important.
What's that point for you though? Like, are you thinking of it, benchmarking it as a certain net worth?
I started with that. So starting to do some of the calculations. It's a little tricky now because we haven't found a really good process, or like we just recently got married. So like thinking about how to do that for two is harder, and like how to navigate and negotiate, like what does that mean? How does it work? Because now there's like all the contingencies and dependencies that were there for one person are like double and triple when we start thinking about long-term family kind of deal. And I'm not that educated in that. So that's what I've been working on now, is like we've been spending a lot more time having conversations about like what's our retirement number and like what do we need to get there and what do the calculators look like? But then also, how do we account for things like kids? Is that going to slow the rate? What's that going to do? So I have a financial advisor that I started working with when I started the Meta. I got the Meta job and I was like, Reese, money is coming in. I also have this like weird thing. I want to make sure that, and he and I work together, and he has like a single fee that he charges for like consultant. It's not like a financial advisor of the rich and famous where like they're managing everything. It's a financial advisor of like, hey, I have questions and want to chart a path. Can you help me with that? So we've been working on that part. And now we actually have like assets. So working on getting an accountant. But that's really the plan right now, is like leaning on the expertise of others to better understand the right way or a good way of creating and crafting that goal. Until that moment that we have it, the things I've been using have been net worth. So like having a certain, what am I trying to work to next? I'm not that great at like long term, like this is the ultimate goal. I'm more at like, okay, I did that. Now here's the next thing. Of like, oh, I paid off credit card and all debt. Okay, now the next thing is we need to get the 6-month fund. Like, okay, now 6-month fund is sorted. Here is the next thing we're working on. We got to save for a wedding. Like, oh, this next thing. So I can ladder my way to something. So I have some shorter term goals, but long term goals we're trying to work with people to get answers for that.
That sounds fantastic. I love also the fact that you have a financial advisor that is fiduciary and fee-based rather than net asset-based. So great job there. I love all of this. This feels like also the rawness of you coming full back circle from researching humans, prehistoric age, to researching humans now, but also the fact that even after you make 6 figures, it's not the end and be all.
You know, you have to once you reach your goals, you got to think about the next goal on that part. But also, it's very difficult to understand and define success from where you are. So it also has been a learning lesson that there will be something bigger that I'm just not that great at imagining. You know, I think there's dreamers and then there's like practical people who always have $1, and like I'm that person. So the downside is I'm not very good at like seeing what all could be there. But I have been practicing being more open to like not getting too tied to one thing in case the other options are better and I just can't see it.
I love how you're framing this, because this is slightly different from what I heard earlier, as in you're keeping $1 because of the worst possible situation, which you should, like your emergency fund, your safety net.
Yeah.
But also you're keeping $1 in case something bigger and better comes. That's a slightly different mindset, but also a really cool one.
And it's both, it's both and. I'm holding both very contradictory ideas in my head. And the good thing is that the practice was the same. You hold $1. For what reason? It changes.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, Joelle. It was great having you.
It was so wonderful talking to you about this, Minky. Thank you for your resources that you provide as well. And thanks for having me on.